Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark, and with me this week is my trusty internet husband slash sidekick slash co-host slash you've got your own sidekick now. John from John Webster Film. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing, everyone?
So, it's the spooky season, and we really haven't gotten into the spirit that much. But the next couple of weeks, we kind of will. So, this week, we will be doing a retro review of what I consider to be a cult classic film. First saw it back in 1994 when it was in the movie theaters. It's
Oh,
The
wow.
Crow. Yeah, it's The Crow starring Brandon Lee. And John, this is one that got by you, as I understand it.
Yeah. And I have to say, after watching it, I'm kind of surprised by it. It's not quite the movie that I thought it was.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it in like a sentence or two, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
Um, because I guess up until this point, I kind of thought that it was like a hard sort of horror thriller. And
it's
that's not really what it is.
it's
It's an action film. It's got some fantasy elements. It's tender in a lot of ways.
yeah,
So that's not what I thought it was going to be. So this was actually a nice surprise.
yeah, it's kind of like a superhero film too.
Yeah,
And it employs a lot of those same tropes while kind of being its own thing.
yeah.
So,
I
when did you
think
watch it for the first time?
this morning,
Right on.
because I guess something else had been occupying my time earlier this week. I don't know what that is. No, it was nice because I think the reason why I had that impression of this film is because of all the stuff surrounding the film with Brandon Lee's death. So that was kind of a specter over this film that I had never seen. And I guess maybe because of that, I always assumed it was a really dark and sort of depressing film. And it turns out I was like totally off the mark as far as what it is.
For the record, fam, it took 2 minutes and 20 seconds for Brandon Lee's death to be mentioned after we started our conversation. Like this film is like it goes hand in hand with his death. It's almost weird. Like there's been talk of a remake of this film for a long time, and people think that that production is cursed because it keeps not getting made.
Yeah, and the thing is, I also kind of had it's been so long since I heard about all that that it kind of escaped my mind the nature of his death because I haven't read up on it much. I probably knew back then when it happened, but I hadn't realized the circumstances with him being shot on set and all that. And I read up on it after I finished watching the film, and it was kind of creepy because then you realize there's this whole other layer to the film that I'm probably going to end up watching it again with that in mind, even though it's a little bit morbid, but there's this element of the fact that he was shot in the scene where he's killed in the movie, and the fact that the story involves him rising from the dead. It's just it does it's an unsettling
And
element of the film.
and I gotta say that probably adds to its, I don't want to say popularity, but maybe its mystique is the way that, well, and Brandon Lee is Bruce Lee's son, and Bruce Lee died very unexpectedly, very abruptly, and under maybe what some people might consider questionable circumstances. Um, so there's a lot of sort of pop culture urban mythology tied up in the film also.
Yeah.
And
I actually remember, and now I know why I've just remembered why I was aware of this film when it came out, even though I was probably a bit too young for it, especially thinking that it was a much uh, darker film than it maybe is. But I think it was around that time that the film Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, was out. And the fact that in that film you get, obviously you see that Bruce Lee had children, and you hear him say Brandon, and the fact that this was all sort of going on in pop culture around the time, and so I think that just made it so that I was even more aware, being a fan of that film, and that this had transpired. But it's weird it's weird that this film has kind of been almost like a specter, in my mind, something that I had never seen, but I was aware of the circumstances around it. And again, I just have to say it's weird to have finally seen it and to have a completely different experience than what I expected.
right. I mean, if you're expecting like a horror movie, that's not what this is.
Yeah.
There's some light horror elements. I mean, there's some creepy stuff going on for sure. Top Dollar and I think her name is Micah, his sister lover. They're pretty creepy.
Yeah, I was like, oh, so we have some Song of Ice and Fire elements in here. Always, the good way to show us that they are the bad guys is make sure there's some incest thrown in there.
Well, and smoking an eyeball to get high is also a pretty good indicator.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and again, like the other horror element, somebody, zombies rising from the grave. That's the good guy.
Yeah. It's fun because I did think when I was watching this, the fact that, it's what, a year after his death and he rises from the grave. I'm like, he doesn't look so bad.
Right. I mean, he left a pretty good looking corpse for after a whole year. Of course, he probably was revived looking horrible because we quickly learned that he heals all injuries.
Yeah.
So maybe the arrival of the crow, his corpse starts reconstituting itself, and it took a little while before he could actually break out of the grave. I don't know. Headcanon.
No, and that does work. Once I saw that he was starting to heal, it made sense that his, that he looked in pretty good condition, because it's sort of his body would have been revived in that way, and he healed up. So it made sense.
Right.
There's a couple elements. There's actually a couple elements of this movie where I was kind of like, does that really work? Does that make sense? And then the film would sort of fill in the gap for me and give an explanation. And that's one of those things.
Hi, Carol. I mean, there's no better high than smoking somebody's eyeball, though. So yeah, like,
I want to hear what you're like, because you saw this back then. So what was your reaction?
Okay,
coming out of the theater,
given that it's 25 plus years ago, like, forgive me if I can't recall specifics, but I do know that something about this film really spoke to me. I love hero stories, this, and this film, like, all the main characters are kind of archetypes that don't really change or have an arc throughout the film. The only arcs are really had by, like, Sarah and Darla and probably Albrecht have arcs throughout the film, but everybody else is who they is at the end of the film. They are who they were at the beginning, so to speak. But Also, there was something in the visual style of this film that was brand new at the time. There was a lot of CG of the cityscape that was really well done. It's 1994,
Yeah.
but it's aged, even that's aged pretty darn well. Like the healing effects, maybe not as much, but like the bird's eye view that we get a lot of in this film was really well executed, and it sort of has a neo-noir film feel to it.
Yeah, and also it's funny because it's strange that I didn't think of this right off the bat when I was watching the movie, because we just talked about it the other day, the fact that Alex Proyas is the director of this film. But when the film started, I immediately thought, this reminds me of Dark City. I don't know if you've seen that film, but that same kind of, the cityscapes and the visual effects kind of used for that, and the fact that this is, I guess it's our world, but it's almost like a fantasy city. Like
Right.
it's its own world. Is it the same Earth that we know? It's like, I don't want to get too science fiction-y with it, but it does feel like a place sort of out of time.
Yeah, like I get what you mean. Like it's our world, but it's not quite our world.
Yeah. And of course, in Dark City, there's a very good reason for why that is. But if you haven't seen the film, I won't discuss.
Yeah, I have not, but maybe we should talk about Dark City at some point in the
Yeah.
future.
But I like that because it puts you like a bit off kilter as the movie starts, because so you don't get really comfortable with your surroundings. But yeah, I just had this thought as you were listing the characters, like just how great is Ernie Hudson in this?
Fantastic.
I had a great time watching him in this, because I do feel like this is the kind of movie, it's really weird, but he's like the sort of down to earth element. I feel like he is kind of the point of view character for the audience, so that we can be at ease. Like, we get this guy, even if all the other stuff is kind of weird and out there. He grounds it.
Yeah, he is the audience in some way.
Yeah.
Sarah fulfills some of that role as well, but yeah, I agree. Albrecht, played by Ernie Hudson, the black police officer, is just like he can give a continuity that none of the other characters can, as you say, because he's grounded in reality. But like he also shows how deeply he cares for the people around him, in that he meets Sarah the night that Eric and Shelley die, and a year later she knows all she has to do is show up, and he's going to buy her a hot dog. This is how it goes.
I'm sorry, I had to bring this up because I really do love that moment. I was watching, I'm like, why does he still have his hat on? But it's great. It's a great character touch, and I do like that that Eric calls him out on on that.
You're still wearing your hat.
Yeah, it's like,
can I say something kind of just like tangentially related?
Yeah.
The entire time I was watching this film, because I watched it again this morning also, the entire time I was watching it, I was like, how good a Joker would Brandon Lee have been?
I honestly was thinking of Joker the whole time, specifically, the latest film with Joaquin Phoenix, and how kind of I think that's kind of unavoidable. Just the scene towards the beginning, as he's putting, as he's just come back to life and he's putting this stuff on his face. It was very evocative of that moment in Joker when Joaquin is doing that. I mean, very different stories, very different characters, obviously, but
Sure.
still, I couldn't help but think of that.
But
And the fact that somebody does at one point say to him, "You're supposed to be a clown," so it was kind of inescapable to draw that conclusion.
but he's kind of Joker and Batman in one character.
Yeah.
In some ways. And I will say, like, when he is at his most sinister in this film, say going after some of T-Bird's boys, like, he's genuinely scary, and he can deliver that mocking monologue while he's doing it, and be come across as just, I don't know, very threatening. And it just made me go, man, what a great Joker he would have been if he had been given the chance.
Yeah, and again, it just comes back to the fact that this was not only was the film different from what I expected, but this character was different from what I expected, and the performance.
What did you expect out of the character then?
I guess just based on the poster alone, that this would be like this sort of terrifying figure that would sort of haunt the film and the characters. Not that he doesn't, but there's sort of there's still such humanity to the character, and even he takes delight in things at certain moments. It's just it's just some lighter touches than what I expected.
Right. It's got a lot more heart than you expected, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And the fact that, you know, he's just got moments like when he's going after, you know, the people that did this to him, and sorry, I'm actually still familiarizing myself with names. What was done to him and Shelley, which I can actually pick out her name easily because her name is Shelley Webster.
Right.
So I did notice that. But like, he's making sure that the people that did this to them and who he's taking out acknowledge what they did before he takes them out. And so it's just, he's less of like this brooding, avenging angel type figure, and just a very human character who's righting the wrongs that were done to him and Shelley. So it's, yeah, like a vigilante superhero, basically.
Yeah. And he's even got a superpower. Can't really kill him.
Which actually was almost a gripe of mine a while into this film, because there's a turn towards the end where you realize that he's not invulnerable.
Right. He has a weakness.
But the film almost carries it to a point where you start to wonder, wait, is this guy actually invincible? Nothing hurts him? And that did concern me for a little bit, because if you can't place your lead character in some kind of danger, then there's really no
stakes.
Yeah.
But let me do a quick impression for you. Car, bang, fuck, I'm dead.
Yeah, once it became evident that the crow was in fact his weakness, then yeah, I was like, okay, cool. I take back what I was thinking, and I'm in it for the finale. Yeah, right. Retribution more than revenge. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would also agree. Like, I mean, revenge is part of it, but like he's basically bumping on. It's a revenge story, but the people he's seeking revenge against are horrible, terrible people. Like, there's nothing evil about hating evil. That's personal opinion. Say what you will, but like, these people were going to continue to kill and destroy, and I've got no sympathy for them. They smoked an eyeball. That's like, sorry, man, that's too far.
Uh, yeah, and in fairness, Michael Wincott, who plays the chief villain,
Top dollar. He's called
yeah,
top dollar.
um, like he always plays villains. I really like, even if he wasn't doing this horrible the stuff, it would be pretty easy to just root against him and be like, yeah, you can go.
Yeah, he's a bad guy in general. I mean, at least his characters are. But there's something even like in the way he dresses is almost Victorian, and he fights with a sword. Not real sword fighting, by the way. Just saying. Hashtag not real sword fighting. There, we'll move on. It's movie sword fighting, and not very realistic, but looks good on screen.
But that again goes back to what I was saying about the setting of this film, and that it feels like almost out of time, because you can have this guy wielding a sword and you're like, yeah, it's just part of the world.
Yeah. So the film takes place on Devil's Night, October 30th, which is let's go out the night before Halloween and torch the city. It's not explicit in the film why they're doing this, but I believe in the original comic book from which this is adapted, it's an insurance scam thing,
Yeah, I mean, in the film, it's just kind of alluded to that it's just in the name of chaos.
Yeah, which like I have a wonder if that is the bigger sort of like theme going on there, because Top Dollar is into some weird shit like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but also possibly demon worship. I mean, it is Devil's Night, and it's his most important night of the year. So, what do we got?
Again, though, that kind of adds another Joker element to this. Like in The Dark Knight, I'm an agent of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's what Top Dollar is, his aim, his purpose, so that just brings another level of that into play. Because really, that's kind of almost tangential to the point of the film, because this is such a story of a guy who's been wronged, and he's going after the people that wronged him. So, not to say that the details of the plot don't matter, but we don't necessarily need much more of an explanation than the baddie is interested in sowing chaos.
Yes, sir. Which, I mean, I'm chaotic. I like a little chaos, but like wanton destruction is not for me. Thanks.
Are you sure about that, Stephen? I feel like I know you pretty well.
No, destruction with a purpose. That's what I'm about. Not wanton destruction. Anyway, I digress. So I will say also that this film influenced a generation of people. It was one of the more popular movies the year it came out. It has attracted a cult following on video since its release. And if you just watch it with your eyeballs open, you're like, this is a superhero movie for goth kids, which I believe is a direct quote from Ridiculous Ed Tollett earlier in the stream. I think I even put it up on the screen. I'm going to see if I can find it again, because I thought it would, yep, there it is. It's a superhero movie for goth kids. And there's a lot of, like, the music is so iconic. Like, watching this film again, it just blew my mind how the music instantly took me back. And not just the soundtrack pieces, but a lot of the orchestrations in certain scenes as well.
Yeah, I feel like I will disappoint you a little bit because having only just watched the film, I really wouldn't be able to begin to tell you the parts of the score that were interesting to me. That is something I'd have to go back and take a closer look at. But it certainly was effective. I mean, everything from both the visuals and the sound elements from both the score and the sound effects and everything really set a tone and it just immersed you in the world, you know, from the get-go. So it was all very brilliantly done.
Yeah, there's not a lot of sort of like exposition in the film. A lot of, I mean, we see through flashbacks. Really, kind of the only exposition we get is a voiceover from Sarah at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, and I actually really liked that this film, it doesn't really explain everything to you off the bat. There's things, layers that are kind of revealed as it goes on. We see more of the flashbacks, but also even with Ernie Hudson's character, we don't even necessarily know the details of why he's, you know, was knocked down from being a detective and down to a regular cop. But those reasons get revealed as the film progresses. So it's not a story that lays everything out for you at the beginning. You just kind of have to go along with it and trust that through the writing and the characters kind of peeling back layers that you're going to find out eventually.
Sorry, I got distracted. Sauce, like, yeah, come back and watch once you've seen the film. It's definitely worth a watch. Even John will tell you that, who hadn't seen it before this morning.
Yeah,
worth a watch. Yes,
very much so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There we go, Laura. It can't rain all the time, but it rains throughout 95% of this movie.
To Ridley Scott, because Blade Runner, and specifically the original, it rains all the time, which it's probably inescapable to mention Blade Runner in reference to this film, because I feel like Blade Runner influenced so many films of this kind.
You're right. This is one of the two films that people always talk about when it comes to like comparing this film with others.
Yeah, because, well, Ridley Scott very much, he introduced so many sort of staples of you know, I was going to say of the genre, but I don't even really know what genre specifically this film is. But a lot of things, from the constant rain to some of the camera shots, the lighting, things like that. So, and movies, everything from this to The Matrix to, you know, Dark City again, which actually has a lot in common with The Matrix.
Yeah.
They're all trading sort of in that stock that started with Blade Runner. But
Right.
But this film, yet, you know, it's not like it's just copying that style. It's visually, it does feel quite distinctive.
Well, again, I feel like the two movies I always hear mentioned when people are talking about The Crow is, as you say, Blade Runner, and then Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah.
Which we did a retro review of in the past. Go check out that film. Go check out that retro review. We had a good time with that one. But
Yeah.
But that in turn was probably influenced to some degree by Blade Runner, although it appears to be less directly influenced the way this film is. I feel like this movie is darker than those two, though. I mean, there's some pretty awful things going on that Top Dollar and T-Bird and his gang and everybody else is up to. So, Yeah. Anyway, I digress off that point. Like, I was about to start talking about Shelley, and I don't want to trigger anybody. There's some horrible shit goes down, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that the flashbacks are especially horrific, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Fortunately, they don't linger with visual cues, you know, not a, oof, but it's pretty awful. It's pretty awful.
And I guess it's fair to also say that watching this, and I will say that this has probably become more and more evident to me, having been doing streams with Amy, and especially the fact that, we're going to be doing that more and more, is that she's made me aware of sort of story tropes that were very prevalent, and the fact that, thinking this was back in 94, so it very much has the trope of, something horrible is done to the the female love interest, and and the man is coming back to exact revenge. So, but that's kind of, when you're dealing with a revenge story, that's kind of part and parcel. Just something horrible, tends to happen to those people who want revenge. So, but yeah, it's not pleasant to watch.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I think we're spared some of the more sort of in your face details.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Just this movie is so deep, I can go into my own rabbit hole while you're talking. Um, and I don't want to oversell the film. Like, it's not perfect. It's got its things that it could have done better, but I say that about every movie I've ever seen. So, all in all, I really do love it though, and all in all, I think it. Well, 26 years later, you watched it for the first time. You're like, wow, it was way better than I expected. And people are showing up to talk about it right now because they loved this film. I am going to throw it to the chat because I've seen Santivia talking about seeing it several times in the theater. I've seen it a few times in the theater. I have a memory of going to watch with my ex-wife. What is it? The Crow 2, is that City of Angels? Anyway, and it was not great, and it broke my heart that it was not great because I wanted it to be great.
And that's interesting. I wonder, was there trepidation back then of doing sequels? Because you mentioned that people are hesitant to do a remake because they say it's cursed.
No. So the thing is, like, the remake would have reimagined the Eric Draven character in the Crow sequels. They are these similar revenant type of creatures, but they are, like, at least in the Crow 2.
Okay, so it's
Eric. It was not Eric Draven.
Okay.
There was a Crow Stairway to Heaven TV series in Canada that was Eric Draven, played by somebody else. I heard it was not good. I think there's a total of 4 Crow films, because I feel like Salvation is one, and that has Kirsten Dunst in it. Hold on. Now I need to look this up. All right. Because she was in, I know she was in this movie.
I'm actually just looking up the cast list for this film as well, because I wanted to run through some of the names of people I recognized. I kind of laughed when I saw John Polito as the guy who runs um, the shop where what do you call it?
Yeah, the pawn shop.
The pawn shop, and it's like that's a guy who just doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut.
Right. But yeah, at any rate, like none of the sequels were very good. I saw 2 and 3. I had hopes for 3 that 3 would turn it around, but
That's a story I know all too well, Stephen.
yeah,
When they keep dishing out sequels for something, and you're like, the franchise can be saved if the next one is good.
Well,
oh, no, it's worse.
I will say this: The Crow 3 was better than The Crow 2, but by that time I was like, no, I'll just love the first one and move on with my life. The Crow 2 was a crime against filmmaking. Like I walked out of that film and I went, that whole movie is yellow. In the same way that this film is black and white. I mean, it's not actually black and white, but it's got a noir feel to it. So there's a lot of black and white, like even in the face makeup, and there's a lot of stark contrast between the lit and the unlit parts. All the lighting in The Crow 2 is yellow, and I'm like, why have you done this? It's not even fun to look at. It's just yellow. Everything's yellow, and I'm sorry, yellow does not fill me with that same dread that harsh black and white does. I hate it, but we're not talking about those movies. We're talking about this other one, with the one with Brandon Lee in it. His final movie, his best movie he ever did. I have seen 2 of his other films. Can't remember what they're called. I know I've seen 2 of them though. They were fine. He was a burgeoning action hero, but this is the one that would have launched him into stardom, I think, into superstardom, because he gives an amazing performance. He is equal parts scary and vulnerable. He's got the light and the darks in him, which is again reflected in the way he paints his face with white and black makeup.
I'm very glad you said that word vulnerable, because that's perfect to describe his performance, because I feel like it's kind of atypical. Because in a movie like this, you'd almost expect that, okay, play the guy as vulnerable beforehand, but when he's risen back up from the dead, he's gonna be, brooding and strong and like untouchable, and you wouldn't see any of that vulnerability, but they choose to go in a different direction with it. And I think it's a great performance. And I think I found the film very touching precisely because he is vulnerable throughout the film.
Yeah, he continues to be relatable despite being some sort of undead revenant throughout the majority of the film. And let's be honest, that's what he is. He is undead of some kind. I want to make D&D stats for a Crow, for this type of risen from the dead type of character. What do you think, John? You want to help? Want to help me make D&D stats?
Yeah, because I know
you do
everything about
that. Of course you do. So yeah, looking at the cast list, I'm going to be honest, nobody really jumps off the page to me. I mean, okay, I say that. Ernie Hudson, I've definitely seen plenty of other places, but most of these people I know from this film.
I actually know Michael Wincott. I mean, I've seen him in lots of stuff.
I've seen him other places too, but I really know him from this film.
Well, I know him from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, because he was in that film. I'm trying to remember exactly the name of it. Guy of Gisborne. That was the character. So I always think from that.
Oh wow, that is him. Holy crap! I probably did know that, like in the back of my head, and yeah, that's crazy. You're right. He is kind
Yeah,
of
I always remember that character because that's despite the myriad of problems that Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves may have. I, I I was young when I saw it, and I always do remember that early scene when, um, when they're chasing the boy and Robin and Azim come up on them, and he basically challenges them to a fight, and that great musical score comes in. So it's a great scene, and I always remember Michael Wincott from that. So yeah, I'm always thinking of him from that, and because he's a villain in that, I will always think of him as a bad guy.
right.
That holds true in this film.
I mean, I'm with you, and I agree. Like, he always resonates as a bad guy with me as well. I'm
He seems to get creepier and creepier as the years go on in his villainous performances, which is good. He knows how to do it, so there's nothing wrong with that.
right. We're not saying he's doing a bad job.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned this, so I've got to see if I can get this picture to come up. Is it here? No. Dang it, computer, why you do this to me? There it is. Yeah, so somebody was mentioning the hair. So this is the Crow 1 versus the Crow 2. Brandon Lee versus the guy from the Crow 2, whose name I don't know. That hair is so ridiculous. I'm sorry, I just can't even. As a connoisseur of long hair myself, like.
And you can see the yellow colors.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to put that back up again just for that. Like, you can see how yellow it is, and this is like not the best picture either, as you can tell. But yeah, I hate that movie with a passion. And it's probably because I loved the first one so much. Like, I would have loved another story similar to the first film, but like, it needs to be different enough to be interesting, and it just wasn't that. It just wasn't. Anyway, all right, now I'm really done crapping on the Crow 2. I mean it this time.
It's so funny because I haven't seen that movie, and here we are talking about it, and everybody, this is cracking me up because before we started the stream, Steven sent me a message that said, please tell me you watched the movie. Because you had a dream. I guess you had fallen asleep and had a dream that I hadn't watched it. And I guess we were doing the stream, which, by the way, I am flattered that I'm in your dreams, Steven.
Oh, yeah.
And I bet it happens more
nightmare.
You'd like to admit.
This was a nightmare, not a dream. So take that with a grain of salt.
And but here we are talking about the movie that I haven't seen. So
right, kind of a meta moment there. But I will say, like, and I said this earlier, the only people with real arcs in this film are Sarah, her mom Darla, and a little bit of Sergeant Albrecht, played by Ernie Hudson. Everybody else is kind of an archetype throughout the whole thing. And it's weird. T-Bird's crew should not exist. Like, it doesn't seem like they lie to each other. It doesn't seem like they work well together. Maybe it's just that, hey, we are the 4 craziest assholes in the entire city, so we have to work together because nobody else wants us. What do you think? Think that's
yeah?
possible?
I mean, they seem perfectly willing at a moment's notice to kill each other. Because there's that scene towards the beginning where they're all at gunpoint, and so it seems a miracle they're able to work together, but they've got, They've got the person above them who's basically probably they're in enough fear of that they're working together to just survive in their environment.
Right. What are we talking about in the chat over here? Some shirtless guy. Who was shirtless? Tintin? I don't know who they were talking about.
I think, were they talking about the picture that you put up?
Oh, maybe. Somebody with a half shirt on with his belly button hanging out.
I certainly hope they aren't talking about my appearance in your dreams, Stephen.
No, you were way sexier than that. Oh my God, they are talking about this picture. Hold on. More Crow 2 hate. It's not over yet. Look at his hairy belly hanging out of that costume. Next to that chiseled Brandon Lee face. Man, it's just a tragedy. All right. Please don't bring up the Crow 2 again. You keep sucking me back in. I keep trying to get out, and it keeps sucking me back in.
Which, speaking of movies that are bad, that disappoint in the face of its predecessor. Sorry. Yeah. We're not going to just start listing off movies that we have gripes with.
We're not. Well, let's So, you know, we've kind of jumped all over the place with this so far. And I'm not really sure what else to even say about this movie at this point. I love it. It's not that deep. It's a story that's been kind of told before. What really makes it unique is its visual styling, and it's sort of like the feel of it, the way it's shot, the way it's lit, the way it's edited and paced.
But I do think there are some great character dynamics. I really do like the way the film starts off with Ernie Hudson's character and the dynamic that develops between him and Sarah. Just the fact that, you know, he has no choice but to essentially be honest with her at some point. No, Danny. No. I trust Stephen on this one. And the fact when he says, when Sarah says, why'd you tell her that about Eric? And he's like, I had to. And she calls him out and says, you're also lying to me about Shelley. And there's a moment where he doesn't try and, you know, cover that up. He just kind of, you know, looks at her in acknowledgement, and there's a tender moment between them. And I like that it develops so that they have a close bond going forward in the film. Yeah, because honestly, it's something that her story is needed to give the film some additional heart, because as far as the plot mechanics, you could actually do without her character and just have this be straight up about this guy's.
I will say that, except at the end of the film, when he has finally killed Skank and thrown him out the window.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. And yeah, she does come into play. You're right. Sorry. But I'm saying there's a version of this film that they conceivably could have done without that character, but it would have been a weaker film. And I like that for much of the film, the reason she's there is just to add sort of another level of, because it really adds a lot to the story of both Eric and Shelley, who were not just a couple in love, but they were looking after this young girl too, which I think adds another sort of level of emotion. And I do like her interplay with Ernie Hudson and the fact that then, there's additional stakes at the end of the film when then she's taken captive. And that's when the danger actually ramps up. Up to that point, you're just seeing Eric sort of mow down all these people who have wronged him. But that climax of the film is where there's stakes for both Sarah's life and also the fact that Eric then becomes vulnerable.
Yeah, because I actually think, and somebody else said this, I can't remember who. You can drop it in the chat again if it was you, and we will give you the your props. That Eric was vulnerable when he was not because the crow was injured, but because he had actually completed the task that he came back to do, which was to kill T-Bird and his crew.
Okay.
Neither it's not explicit in the film, but
yeah, like, and having just watched it the first time, I'm definitely not thinking about that.
Right.
So, but thank you for saying that, because actually that does make a lot of sense.
Okay, Santi has said that. Thank you. Do you mind if can I call you Santi? Because I always want to call you that. Because I think that would be a great nickname for you. I'm sure it's one that you've heard many times before. But yeah, so like there is that interpretation of the film exists. It is not explicit, but
headcanon.
Yeah, like I think it's a fine explanation as to why he became vulnerable. Because the crow, the bird itself, is a supernatural creature in that film. It is not a bird.
Yeah. Can we just say it's the three-eyed raven?
Sure, it's Bran Stark, could be Blood Raven. I mean, but it's a crow. Although, like, nice dropping of Edgar Allan Poe's The Crow when he's breaking into the pawn shop. You heard me rapping, didn't you?
Oh, that's some good stuff. Like, he does just like I said before that, he's not this like sort of terrifying figure just over the proceedings, but he does say some creepy stuff at various points in the movie. That's just, it's creepy, but he also there's this strange sense of delight he's taking in moments like that, which adds an element of fun to this, even though it's very just dark and foreboding. But I did enjoy moments like that.
Did I not say The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe?
I think you said The Crow.
Oh, maybe I did. But I know it's called The Raven. But yes, really nice dropping of a few bars. Anyway, a key or lyrics. That's not right either. Anyway, a few lines from The Raven. The fact that
well said, Laura.
I'm sure this take personal vengeance too far. Yeah, he was sent back for a reason to to kill these four people: T-Bird, Tintin, Fun Boy, and Skank. What great names all these characters have too. Like,
it's so funny. This comes after, and I just did Mad Max Fury Road yesterday with Amy, and we were talking about all the weird names in that movie, and here we are today
with more weird names. Yeah. And Laura, I really do appreciate that type of that read on it as well. He's sent back for vengeance, but he can't take it too far. Yes, Micah, there is a person called Skank. He is basically a meth head. If you haven't seen it, which I think you told me you have not seen it. Told me that earlier. All right, we're about an hour in. You want to go ahead and do the mid-roll?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, well, let's start with, hey, everybody, thanks for actually coming and showing up and engaging and having a good time talking about this weird-ass movie. Like and subscribe if you haven't, hit that thumbs up. subscribe to the channel. We do this every week. And speaking of doing this every week, next week we're going to have something a little bit outside the box for what we would normally do. We will be doing another movie review for the film, the animated Pixar family film, Coco. Pretty far off the beaten track for what we normally would talk about, but a friend of mine asked me to do it. The timing seems perfect. It's that stream will be on November 1st. The stream is about Dia de los Muertos, which is November 2nd. And it almost seemed like divine intervention. I looked around at my two co-hosts and said 3 white people talking about Dia de los Muertos is probably not the best thing to do. So
Wait, there's nothing wrong with that, is there, Stephen?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but like we could do better. So I reached out on Twitter, and through a mutual friend, I met with her name is Cecilia. She runs her own Spanish language channel where she talks about nerdy, geeky stuff. She is from Mexico. She is intimately familiar with the culture in a way that me and John and Nessie just can't be because it's not part of our culture. So she will be joining us next week to help us talk about Coco. Is Day of the Dead big in Texas? Big, no. Present, yes, absolutely. There is a sizable Mexican-American community here. And, yes, it is celebrated, but I wouldn't say it's big. Yeah, just hit that one on the head. So come back next week for Coco. It'll be a lot of fun. John, what's going over there at John Webster Film?
Oh, nothing big. Well, what, you think something's been going on? No, folks, I
heard you cheating on me with a woman.
Yeah, well, that should be old hat by now.
Stephen. Yeah, it really should.
No, so I just got a brand new co-host. I have been joined by Amy Blackfire as my co-host on John Webster Film, and last night we covered Mad Max Fury Road, so go check out that stream. We had a great time. And next week, or this coming week, on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll be covering the 2001 film The Others for Halloween. And Amy's actually going to be in a Halloween costume, so I have to find something. I don't know. Maybe I should order a Hobbit costume or something.
John, I've got bad news for you. If you cannot order anything in 6 days.
Well, I don't know. I can get a cheap costume off Amazon. I can try.
You can try. Well, good luck to you, buddy.
Yeah. If not, I'll just get out my lightsaber and that'll have to be enough. But also I do want to make sure that I keep mentioning this next month, tentatively on the 21st of November, I'm going to be doing an interview with the author of the book, The Music of the Lord of the Rings films. His name is Doug Adams. So, look forward to that and stay tuned for more details. That's going to be a lot of fun. Okay.
So is that going to be a live stream?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to show up and ask him all kinds of questions about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Don't do that, Stephen.
Okay, just one. Just one question.
Because I'm sure he's never heard that joke before.
I'm going to ask him one he's never heard. I've got time to think about it.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought. Oh, you know what? Patrons. So patrons, you guys keep the lights on for us. Like, you pay our monthly subscription for StreamYard, which is our streaming software. You are going to help me in the long run get a new and better computer. And when that happens, hopefully, fingers crossed, might do a little bit of game streaming even. And I'm not asking the patrons to do anything more. And just so you out there realize, like, we're not sitting here with our hand out. If you want to contribute, please do. The most that we give really is shout outs. We want everybody to have access to all of our content at all times. So nothing is behind the Patreon paywall. But if you want to, support this community, Patreon link is down in the description. Also, link to John's stuff and Nessie's stuff. Nessie's not here this week. She's doing the nurse thing again. So yeah, we thank you for that. Go follow their channels. Go do that stuff there. Follow them on Twitter. And what else do we need to talk about, John?
I would just be, but real quick, I'd be remiss also because I'm no longer doing my stream alone. So I will just say, and Amy, I see you're in the chat. So if you want to drop in some links, make sure you go check out both her blog and her YouTube channel. She's doing some extraordinary things. She just put out like a 2-hour video on a Song of Ice and Fire theory that she did with our good friend Jolie, with Crowfood's daughter, and who else was on there?
Emma Smith.
Emma. Oh, so yeah. I mean, that's just one heck of a lineup. So please go check that stuff out. Either Amy, go ahead and drop a link, but also if you go to John Webster Film, you can find all of her links in the About tab. So go ahead and look for that.
There you go. And there's Amy's channel link. And yeah, we love you, Amy. And Jess is calling you out. And I agree. Like, you probably already own a Hobbit costume, and you're just like, I'll see if I can get one.
I don't. At one point, I did have an Aragorn costume, but I don't think I have it anymore. So I'll have to put something together.
Fair enough. And I will say this too: The Mandalorian is coming back next week, so it won't be long. We'll have some more Mandalorian coverage. Also, we're probably going to be doing a little bit more Expanse coverage in the run-up to season 5. So more Mandalorian, more Expanse coming very soon. We'll probably be doing most of that with Nessie, and since she's only here every other week, we'll space it out as we need to in order to have her here. And in the off times, John, there's movies we can watch. And we'll reach out to some other people.
We're basically racing each other to see who gets to Batman Returns first.
Right. But I feel like maybe our next, just you and me, I have this friend, she's called Jolie. She's down in the chat right now. All hail the Night's Queen. She was on that. Have you heard of her? She's pretty cool. She has been begging for this movie, and I need her to shut up about it. So I think we might do Attack the Block.
She's also a huge fan of alternative historical films. So, so let's keep that. Don't kill me, Jolie.
So maybe Attack the Block. A review of that one is coming very soon too.
Yeah, but I have to say, I'm super excited. We got The Mandalorian coming back. We got The Expanse coming back. Like, I need this stuff in my life because it's been a year. It's been like, there's been a lot of good stuff. I think that has come for us in the year since we just did our anniversary stream and we talked about that, but it's been pretty stressful all the same. And I'm just happy to be getting some of these shows back that we love.
Me too. I mean, I really like The Mandalorian, but The Expanse, that's the one that I'm just like, oh, yes, thank you so much. So, yeah, if you like The Expanse, if you like The Mandalorian, we'll be talking about both of those shows in the not too distant future. Okay, I guess it depends on ridiculous. Ed Tollett says Mandalorian is this week, not next. It's on Friday. Okay, yes, it comes out in like 5 days. Oh, I almost forgot the Patreon shout-outs. I talked about Patreon, but I didn't give the shout out. So a shout out to our High Council, consisting of Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, Sir Maura Lee of Starfall, and Sixto Sounds, aka JP the Axe Grinder. And also to our lords and ladies, Lady Leaf Underhill, and the man whose quote you see on screen right now, Ridiculous Ed Tollett, aka Sean the Alpha Patron. We love you guys. Thank you so much for continuing to support us.
Like, I know what Sean looks like,
yeah,
but I just will always picture dollars, Ed.
right. He's got a vastly superior beard to Dollar.
He does. He really does.
Vastly superior. Okay, so
yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, he's okay. I heard he can spell things in A Song of Ice and Fire really well. I heard a rumor that he was good at spelling. Anyway, it's a little bit of a joke.
Might there be pictures?
There might. I've seen them. Anyway, you know what? Let's talk about this movie, okay? We are way off that. Oh my God! Do you see this? They're figuring it out. All you have to do is annoy me, and then I'll do your movie. Okay, so after Attack the Block, annoying me will just guarantee that you never get your movie.
This is why Amy and I already have our lineup for like the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So
well,
we don't even
math. 130 movies divided by 52 weeks is almost 3 years.
Yeah, but it's been growing since I set 130 number. So
okay, right on.
Okay, so diving back into the movie.
Yeah, turning our eye back towards the film. So let's talk about Brandon Lee a little bit. This was going to be his breakout role, and his death, as you know, untimely as it was, cut off a career that may have saw him go on to really do some great big things. Obviously, other actors filled those roles, but so I've heard conspiracy theories around his death that, you know, there were people in China that had a vendetta against Bruce Lee and his entire family and whatnot. But I do know that his death is ruled an accidental death, and completely accidental, as in, so when you're filming a scene in a movie and there is a revolver, there are bullets that they will put in the revolver that are very low charge, but they have the actual bullet end on it, so that when you see it from the front, the open front of the cylinder, you can see the front of the bullet, and it looks like a loaded gun. So that was the case with one of with the weapon in question, which was a 44 Magnum, which is a very large gun, by the way. It was a Fun Boys gun. And anyway, when that was loaded with these low powder charges, I think what I heard was that they were not the sort of like manufactured for this purpose. What type of low powder charge? Like they took a regular bullet, took the cap, the actual projectile out, dumped out most of the powder and put it back in. But they also did not remove the blasting cap, the little part in the center where the firing pin hits.
Yeah.
The primer, that's what it's called. They did not remove the primer. So anyway, when the gun was discharged in a scene, the projectile attached to that bullet did actually come out of the shell casing and go into the barrel and was stuck in the barrel. And then, because it was late at night, the safety crew had gone home. The barrel of the gun was not properly checked,
Yeah, I'm actually reading right here. It says, as the production company had sent the firearms specialist home early, responsibility for the gun was given to a prop assistant who was not aware of the rule for checking all firearms before and after any handling.
Right. And then in a later scene where he is supposed to be shot up close, in order to give the proper appearance of a gunshot, they loaded a blank in there. So a blank has all the powder, but no sort of bullet in the end of it, no projectile in the end of it. So, but the projectile was already in the barrel of the gun. So when the gun was discharged, it was basically like a 44 Magnum just going off at, 15 feet away from him, and he was shot in the gut. And it was made even worse by the fact that because in the scene he is meant to die in the scene where he gets shot, he was left laying there for several minutes, dying, and nobody attended to him. So it is tragic. And again, like Violent Messiah was saying, he was murdered. He got killed the same way his dad's character died in his last movie. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I subscribe to that idea, but like it's not a 0% chance either.
I mean, yeah, I'm not going to speak to it because I don't know the circumstances surrounding very well, just based on what I've read and heard today. I will say that in these types of situations, I think people tend to also grasp for explanations when sometimes bad things happen. But that's not to say that there wasn't something else going on.
Right, because guy gets shot on a movie set, like that is you find yourself going, how could this even happen? And like their explanation seems plausible, but like there's also enough weirdness to it, especially when you talk about the way Bruce Lee's character died in his last film is the way that Brandon Lee died in real life, and the way Bruce Lee died is similar to the way his master died in, is it The Chinese Connection? Is that the film where his master gets like poisoned and dies from what should have been an aspirin or something? Anyway, I digress. So yeah, like there's a non-zero amount of evidence, but it is tragic because he's such a handsome young man too. And I don't know, 28 years old. So shall we move on from Brandon Lee's death, though? And let me just say that when this film came out, like, I think it was generally well received by critics, but even then, not universally.
And I know, didn't they also have some problems releasing?
They did.
I think I read that Paramount pulled out, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, and then they had to find another distributor, which I believe is Miramax. So there were, I think, 8 days of principal photography left when Brandon Lee died. I think he was only slated for 3 of those days. But they did some digital face replacement with his,
which actually was interesting because I'm kind of glad I read that after I watched the movie, because if you told me, because maybe if you had told me I would have noticed, but I'm saying, having not known specifically what they had to do to finish up the film, I didn't really realize any of that, that they did digital face replacement, or because I know that they had to rewrite some sections and film some stuff using a double, but could have fooled me because watching the film, I didn't really consider that anything was out of place or anything. So So I think they did a good job in wrapping it up so that they could honor his performance, because situations like that, I know there's always the concern that they have to end up, if they can't make it work, they have to scrap the performance, which would have been like making a tragic situation even worse.
I mean, at least we got this one really beautiful film out of him. Because, like I say, I know actually, he only ever did 4 films, Brandon Lee. And his others were not terrible, but they weren't great. Am I wrong? Okay.
I mean,
I'm seeing 5 on his filmography.
Okay, full disclosure, I actually have not seen him in anything else. This is the one and only thing.
So I have definitely seen Rapid Fire and Showdown in Little Tokyo, and neither one of them were great. This movie, again, it's resonating still a quarter of a century later. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say they did a phenomenal job. Because I know I will say that, especially given that this was done back in '94, and if they did digital face replacement, the fact that I didn't notice it watching the film, that's remarkably good work. Because if you compare that to Gladiator, where they had to do something similar with what's
Proximo's actor? I don't remember the actor's name, but Proximo.
Yeah, Oliver Reed, that's his name. It's like, it was good for the day, but when I watch the film nowadays, I can see that he's basically digitally cropped out of another scene and stuck in. It's done well for being the year 2000, but you can see the seams if you're looking for it. So I'm rather impressed that this is a film from '94 when such effects were even more primitive. And the fact that they pulled it off in a way that I didn't even notice it is very impressive.
Right. So should we talk about the remake that never happened?
How far did they get?
Okay, so the thing has been in development hell since 2008. And like, how far did they get? I've heard many names tossed around. Like, I'm looking at a list right now of names of people who have been suggested to play Eric Draven in a Crow remake. And they are Bradley Cooper, Mark Wahlberg, Channing Tatum, Ryan Gosling, James McAvoy. There's some other names that I'm not as familiar with. Alexander Skarsgård, Tom Hiddleston. I think at some point I heard. Momoa. Jason Momoa was considered, but like, every time the project gets close to something, there's some huge setback. And so people are saying that it was cursed.
Well, first of all, I'm not particularly crazy about any of those actors playing the part. Some a little more so than others. I actually could see some of those actors doing a good job. I'm quite a big fan of both Ryan Gosling and James McAvoy. But I think, especially since I hadn't really seen Brandon Lee in anything else before watching the film today, now whenever I think of this film and the actor, it's the role and the man are going to be one and the same. So you'd almost want to find somebody who is unknown.
Yeah. Well, I actually think it might. I mean, maybe it will happen eventually. But like, Tom Hardy's name has also been thrown out.
Yeah, no. I like Tom Hardy a lot, but I don't think that would. But maybe, But if they want to go in another direction with it, but they're doing this, they want to do the same character, presumably. So,
but let's bring back Shelley this time. Let's remake the movie in an alternate dimension where Shelley comes back to avenge what was done to Eric.
Yeah, I think that's great. Forget. Yes. See, Peadar, there you go. There you go. That's your movie. Although I don't know if the project really is cursed. I'm like, no.
Right.
No. But no, I in general though, I do think that would be a good idea. This would be an excellent, even though you'd hear complaints.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like,
I actually think this would be a really good project to gender flip, because it would add
or to reimagine with just a female lead as a Crow type character, which would then be one of the many sequels. It's not the remake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There we go. But I agree. Yeah, at first glance, that's a good idea, but on second thought, not taking any chances.
Right. So I mean, maybe we will eventually get a Crow remake. But to say that it's been a smooth sailing would just be completely, false. When you have that many different people involved over the course of 12 years, it's been a rise and fall and rise and fall and rise and fall. Like, they can't get the funding, they can't get a script, they can get somebody on board for a little while, but then that person goes off to do something else because it doesn't materialize in time. So, I mean, and honestly, a lot of films are that way. You know as well as anyone, John, that Hollywood can be a tough place to get anything done.
But can I just say, I'm going to digress more time. And you know what? I can do this now because now that Amy is on my team, it's part of our official brand. So I can go on and on about it. But I am just thinking as far as curses on the project aside, if you put Kira in that movie, in that role, wouldn't that just prove all the naysayers wrong about that she can only do period films and doesn't go out of that safety net? That would be a wild departure for her.
Really
so
would.
Yeah. So it would actually be really cool to see. But thinking about the curse in the back of my head, if it exists, and I'm like, I probably don't want to risk it, but I do think that would be interesting. Okay, I will get off that because nobody else wants to hear about it.
Amy's here. She probably wants to hear, but she might be the only one.
Her and I have a stream of about this, but I'll spare you all in the meantime. Okay, let's get back on the move.
Right. Okay, well, general thoughts about the film, general ideas, anything we haven't talked about, and I am going to throw it to the chat too. Bring up stuff, ask questions, make points. Please do. I think there is enough in this film to mine for a little bit, but let's be honest, it is not like a really intricate plot.
No, it's not. But neither would I want to say that it's style and no substance, because that's not true either. Because, like I said, I really like a lot of the character dynamics in the film. Also, you know what? And this is kind of veering off, that point, but I do want to ask you, because there's a moment at the end of the film where he, lays down on the grave and Shelley and comes to him. Now, how are we supposed to interpret that? Is that
they are reunited?
But is that, yeah, but is that actually happening? Is it symbolic, or?
I mean, Are you asking me, did Shelley return from the dead
Yeah.
too? I don't think so. I think he has finally reached his afterlife because
Okay.
he completed the mission. He was already shot up and dying,
Yeah.
So to me, that is him reaching his, he's finally with the woman he loves again.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's kind of weird the way they show it, because they don't. It's not like they show her coming out of the grave. So it was just the way it was staged. It kind of confused me, especially, I'll have the benefit in the future of having watched it a couple more times and being able to evaluate stuff like that. But yeah, I just wanted to ask your opinion on that. But that does make a lot of sense.
Okay, Laura, we're going to come right back to your question. I think Sean here it kind of has the same read on it as I do. He was close enough to the other side that he could see her again.
Okay.
And Laura has a couple of good questions here. What do you think makes any movie a cult classic? And do you think this film would have achieved that without Brandon Lee's death? And if so, what would have propelled it to that status? That's a deep question. What I think makes a movie a cult classic is when over time, like everybody talks about how great Citizen Kane is, and like my personal feelings on that matter aside, like that movie is a classic. A cult classic, I think, is a movie that can achieve that same status, but that it is usually comes from the genre storytelling, be that fantasy, sci-fi, horror, and it's because those movies tend to not draw the same type of audience that something like a Citizen Kane or a Wizard of Oz does, um, or a what Gone with the Wind, like the movies that are like this one is a classic, The Godfather. Like everybody went and saw The Godfather. Not everybody went and saw The Crow. Now it was financially successful, but like it was not a smash hit. But if you look at the other movies that came out in 1994, it's probably one that has remained as relevant or more so than any other. So that's what makes it a cult classic, that it rose from sort of the fringes of theater to occupy a place as a classic. What do you think, John?
I think it's very possible that it would have maybe not achieved the same status, but still been considered a cult classic. And I say that because I know for a fact that Alex Proyas's other science fiction film, um, Dark City, is similarly regarded as a cult classic, and that does not have attached to it any sort of looming tragedy about it. As a matter of fact, I'd say that the like science fiction fans and people specifically who love that film kind of view it as they prefer it over The Matrix, which was heavily influenced by potentially heavily influenced by the film. That's certainly what a lot of the fans of that film would say. So I do think that this would have had the opportunity to do that. Now, of course, Brandon Lee's death inevitably contributed to it being maybe a bit more well known. And I mean, you could very easily ask the same thing about, would The Dark Knight have the status that it has? It would still be a critically praised Batman film, but would it have taken on the mythic proportions that it did without the tragedy of Heath Ledger's passing? I think, I mean, it's certainly open for debate whether Heath Ledger's performance would have been as lauded as it was if it didn't have the elements of the fact that he passed away. as amazing as it is, because it's a tremendous performance. But we all know that those types of movies generally aren't given that status by like the Academy and critics and stuff like that. But he went on to posthumously win Best Supporting Actor.
Right.
So
my only caveat to any of that is that Brandon Lee's death changed the film itself. They had to rewrite scenes. They had to change the way certain things were shot and presented. And as I understand it, a lot of the changes that were made it sort of more mainstream, quote unquote.
Okay.
So that would be the only caveat. If Brandon Lee had not died, but we were still presented with the same film, I think it would have maybe not the mythology that it has around it, but I still think it would have been a very successful film because of its unique visual style, because of its unique sort of color palette, and its not theme, mood. That's what I'm looking for. It has a very particular mood about itself.
Yeah, and that's very possible as well. Thing is, we just don't know what might have happened, but I could definitely foresee a scenario in which, because we talked about that this would have been huge for him, and so it could have really taken off for that reason. It's just one of those things where you can do a lot of guesswork, but unfortunately we'll never know.
And I like Zeta Alpha's comment here. The Crow / Raven have mythical ties that could help boost a cult type movie. You are not wrong. So the crow is my favorite animal. I think I've probably mentioned that before a few times here and there on different streams. But yeah, it is my favorite animal for a lot of reasons. I just think they're really, really cool. And maybe this movie influenced that to some degree. Yeah. Oh, Mom says, what happened to the octopus? Number 2, octopus number 2, crow number 1. But yeah.
And Stephen being fickle with his animal rankings.
No, no, crow has been number 1 for as long as I can remember, even. But I do love me a good octopus. And apparently I'm going to get told on by Powder. Thanks, brother. Go ahead and tell them, and then I dare them to come here. Come and fight me if you've got a problem with it. So if I die by octopus before you guys see me again, you'll know what happened. We'll blame Potter. All right. So anything else to say, John?
I will just say, because even though I can't really make too many observations about the music yet, save that for the future. But I will say that the end credits of this film have there's a song that's almost like the vocalist is reading something. It seemed to me a very unusual choice, especially since the studio tendency is always to end your movie with some kind of more popular type song, and it just seemed very in keeping with the style of the film, and so I was quite impressed to end the film that way.
Yeah, and especially since ostensibly the theme of the film is a song called Burn by The Cure, which is a very famous song now, but which was written for this movie. And it's sort of, it's Brandon Lee's character's theme, and it's sort of the theme of the movie as well, but it only plays like as he's discovering his powers, and it also plays during one of the fight scenes, I believe. Anyway, I'm surprised they didn't go with that one because it's a really epic driving beat. Got some crunchy guitars in it. But anyway, yeah, go back and check out the music. And I know, again, it is a soundtrack primarily. It's got a lot of really great music on it, stuff I love from that time. It's got songs from The Cure, Helmet, Rage Against the Machine, Jesus and Mary Chain is on there. I'm trying to remember. Joy Division. I think Henry Rollins, Nine Inch Nails. Anyway, Stone Temple Pilots. Okay, I had to go ahead and look it up. But yeah, it's got a lot of music from a lot of bands that went on to do great things. And I will say, John, you're going to appreciate the like instrumentation, the actual orchestral elements too when you go back, because they work in conjunction.
Well, then the film does have an actual musical score by Graham Revell, so so I can at least go back and appreciate that too. I will also say it gives me such great joy to, in this case it's Bernie, but I love seeing the hashtags physical media. That makes me very proud that I've started.
I bet it does.
It's in our group. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have anything else to say about the movie. One of the drawbacks of when I've only seen a film once.
Yeah.
But
it's not like it's the deepest, most intricate plot. The characterizations are interesting, but like, you know what though? Let's talk a little bit about Sarah, a little bit more about Sarah and her mother, because that is maybe the best arc in the movie belongs to the relationship between those two characters. And it gave us the quote of "Mother is the name for God on the lips and the hearts of children," and I don't know, it gives me goosebumps to hear that, because she was clearly terrified. He was killing her boyfriend, and he's kind of scary to look at if he's coming at you. But heroin is bad for you. Go home, be a mother to your daughter. And it works well enough that she at least is trying. And the last time we see her, which is not something that Sarah was ready to even to think about. Right.
Yeah, she doesn't seem to really be ready for it herself, but she recognizes that her mother's trying, so she leans into it at that point to help her along, and where she says, "Yes, I like them over easy." And
right. Which we did, and that's the last time we see Darla in the film, but we are at least left with the sense that, okay, they can repair this relationship, if they're willing to work to meet each other in the middle. And we don't get a lot of junkies turning their life around type of stories. She should have just been a bad guy or what have you. Not should have been, but she could have been just a horrible mom, and that was it. But the fact that they chose to give her probably the biggest arc in the whole film belongs to Darla. She goes from a wasted, self-absorbed, drug addict to trying to reconnect with her daughter and trying to make up for the years of neglect and that have gone by.
And again, maybe this would have been a better example of an element of that didn't even necessarily need to be in the film, but it's a great small character arc in a film where you've got all these bigger things going on. The fact that they make the time for this mother-daughter dynamic that has a healthy resolution, or at least the beginnings of a healthy resolution, because as you say, we don't see beyond that scene, so it's kind of left to us to imagine where that relationship goes. But it's good so that Sarah has something going forward, because it's not like, Eric, he's going to basically rest in peace with Shelley, and so it's not like, yeah, he came back to life, but he's not going to be able to stay around. He has to move on. So it's good that she has this relationship with her mother that's beginning to be repaired.
Right. Well, and it gives us at least hope that there will be something. Yeah, I think you're not wrong, Violent. I think that is a lot of times the drug addict is seen as the villain. I think a lot of us here would say that addiction is a disease and those people deserve our sympathy and to try to be helped. But it comes from a time when that type of person was often seen as, oh, they're just a wasted, useless person, and they would have ended up dead.
And to be completely honest, that character could have just been there as a sort of to serve the function of a story point along the road for Eric as the male lead, but that it's really that character is there for the mother-daughter dynamic, and the fact that the final scene with her is that mother-daughter relationship and rebuilding it. I think, I don't want to say it's impressive for a 90s film, because we always should be striving to do better even in the 90s, but at the same time, you can't forget that films were, and a lot of films still are, not doing well enough in that regard. So it was nice to see.
Yeah, I agree, and Sarah is only able to be in a position where she can meet her mother halfway because of the positive influence that Shelley and Eric and then Albrecht had on her in her mother's absence. So it is a movie that, through that sort of subplot, tells you that being kind and generous to people is a worthwhile endeavor. I mean, it's a big time backseat to kung fu action and guns going off and the supernatural elements and the story of revenge, but the fact that they found a way to genuinely insert a redemption arc for a minor character into that, I mean, it deserves to be mentioned at least. Okay. Good point, Santivia. Eric was trying not to let Sarah see him, but he wanted to make sure that Darla got a good look. To the point of even holding her face to the mirror with his face right next to hers. You're not going to just see me, you're going to see me and you at the same time. And and it scared the crap out of her. You know what? I still haven't mentioned my favorite quote from the film, and it's my hands down favorite, and it's when Albrecht first meets Eric Draven after he's risen. He's got his gun pulled on him because he just came out of the liquor store's on fire and everything, and he's got his gun on him, and he's like, you move and you're dead. And Eric Draven says, and I say I'm dead and I move. And I'm like, that's a boss line right there, man.
That is really great. But then there's, does he say you're supposed to say freeze or something?
Right. Aren't we supposed to say freeze?
And then he says that when he sneaks into his apartment, it scares the crap out.
And he's still wearing the hat. We talked about that a little bit earlier. But another thing that stuck with me is that whoever was responsible for maintaining continuity of shots throughout the film did a really bang up job, because there is a point right before she gets kidnapped where Sarah hugs Eric and she gets some of his white face paint on her face. And for the rest of the film, because she gets grabbed by Top Dollar basically shortly after that, throughout the rest of the film, she's got white paint that you can barely see on her face, but it's there. Which is not, you could even easily say, she just rubbed it off at some point. But she gets some of that. And that is probably meant to be symbolic about how he has become a part of her now. His influence has changed her in a way, and she will always carry a part of Eric Draven with her, and by extension, Shelley, although that's probably more symbolized by the ring. But that white makeup on her face, gently smeared, it's not super noticeable, but if you're looking for it, it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Potter, applause for that one. The Crow was perfectly justified in his violent revenge. He has just cause. Yeah, thanks for that.
I asked Powder if he would potentially come on to one of my streams in the future, and now I'm realizing that I'm just asking for an entire stream full of puns.
So, I am actually hoping to have him on for some of our Expanse Season 5 stuff, but, you're going to get a stern talking to before we start, young man. You're allowed to wander off course a little bit, but, we do have to talk about the Expanse and talk about it genuinely. So we'll see. If I can get you to behave for a couple hours, I'd love to have you on. I like that interpretation too, Santi. He had to have the face paint in order to not be Eric Draven. He had to be the Crow, so to speak. He had to be for the same reason that heroes wear masks or people shave their head after a breakup. It's something about the way you see yourself and how you present your identity to yourself. Yeah. So I don't really have anything else. We're only about 10 minutes from the end anyway. So, folks, if you've got anything else to say about this fantastic movie, drop it in the chat now. I'll give you some time to catch up. In the meantime, I will say, come back next week where we will be discussing a very different film that is also about dead people,
which I also have not seen, so I'm going to watch it.
All right, and we will be next week, because Anna Iglesias asked for it, and I said yes. We're going to be talking about the Pixar animated film Coco. Again, a little bit different than what we normally would do, but I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to have Cecilia from Geekstralia on, and she is a Spanish language nerdy podcaster who loves the film and also understands the culture in a way a white dude doesn't. So, yeah, look forward to that.
Meanwhile, I'm really thankful that Steven wants to keep doing movies, so I have more time for my for my other channel.
Right. Well, I think we're going to lay off doing too much new stuff until it's Mandalorian and The Expanse. And, we'll fill in other times with other stuff. And okay, John, what do you got coming up on your channel? Then we'll talk about Sean here.
Okay, so yeah, and just go ahead and check out the stream that Amy and I just did last night about Mad Max Fury Road.
Awesome.
and then look forward to next week, Saturday at 7 p.m. We'll be talking about the film The Others for Halloween. And of course, next month, I'll have my interview with Doug Adams, the author of the music of the Lord of the Rings films. So if you have any questions for him, not about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Stephen.
Only one. I got a limit to one. Okay. So, yeah. Go watch the stream from last night over there on John Webster Film. I was there for much of it. It was fantastic. You got me to watch Fury Road. I got you to watch The Crow. We're doing this, man. We're doing this.
Which, like, I was so happy that you enjoyed Fury Road, because we actually talked about this, where it's really easy sometimes if you hear so many good things about a movie and then you finally see it and it just doesn't live up to the hype. And I think that's kind of relevant for, honestly, both of these films. So I was thrilled that you enjoyed it, because it's a good one.
Right on, right on. Yeah, so let's look at Sean's comment here. Ridiculous Ed Tollett says, one of my favorite scenes was the one where T-Bird realizes who is killing him, and he just goes on a rant about, but you can't be you. You're dead. Ain't no coming back. And you're right. Ain't no coming back, man. Ain't no coming back. But, and I agree, like, there's a few instances in this film where people are like, wait a minute, how? Wait, what? People don't come back from the dead. Well, clearly they do in movies and comic books sometimes. But this film clearly establishes that most people don't believe the supernatural is real. Although I think Top Dollar and Micah do. Because I don't know, she's a witch. She wants to steal the crow's power. And just how poetic is it that she gets her eyes clawed out?
That was really enjoyable.
Right. Like, I know there are people who have issues with stuff happening to people's eyes. I get it. But if anybody deserved it, it was her, because she was the one doing stuff to other people's eyes.
An eye for an eye. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
That was uncalled for. I apologize.
Yeah. We forgive you. Yeah. See, I'm with you, Sean. Like, I think that like, Top Dollar might be a demon, or might have made a deal with the devil, something of that nature. You know what I mean? Anyway, I digress off of that point too. Anything else about the film? Anyone? I'll let it linger for just another minute, and if not, then I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. Is there anything else, John, that you had related to the film, or otherwise?
No, I will just again say that this was a pleasant surprise. Not because I didn't expect to enjoy it, but just because, again, it was different from what I expected, and it makes me feel like I probably should have seen the film a long time ago. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, like, you should have seen it a long time ago, especially given how much you love film in general. I was genuinely surprised when you said that you hadn't seen it. I mean, okay, I was a little surprised when you said I hadn't seen it, but when you told me that, you also said, and I never really had much of a desire to see it. And that's when I went like, whoa. Like, we all have those movies that get past us, and then you hear, oh yeah, I've always wanted to see that, but I never got to. Like Fury Road was for me. I wanted to see it. I just never had the time and the inclination at the same line up, you know? But to hear you say, I never really even wanted that much to watch The Crow, I was like, man, go watch it. You'll change your mind. Yeah. And I'm really glad you did enjoy it too, because it's the only thing we have that Brandon Lee was in that was really great. And it changed things. I mean, again, like, goth culture was influenced by and influenced this film, and was in turn influenced by this film going forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know much about goth culture, I'll say, but it's very easy to see that this would have been a heavy influence going forward.
Ooh. Danny, I highly recommend that film. If you haven't seen The Big Lebowski, it's definitely like,
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that film will be coming up on John Webster Film. The question is when. Well, Amy and I have pretty much stacked the rest of this year with stuff, but it won't be too long before we're going after that. And I know Nessie, for one, absolutely wants to be on for that, and of course, Stephen, if you want to be there too, you'll be more than welcome.
I don't think I can do that, John. It would be too meta. I'm actually in that movie, so.
Yeah, but if we can't have Jeff Bridges, it's like we want the next best thing, Stephen.
Okay, I'll do my the dude cosplay for it, which is basically put on pants for me, you know. Anyway, I have been known to abide. So.
The robe, though. Let's do it out.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, you know what? We've reached the end. We're just grasping at straws for stuff to talk about. So, yeah, please come back next week. We'll talk about Coco. Please watch John and Amy stream next week about the others. Nessie will be back next week. And until then, you know, be good to each other. It's 2020 for all of us. So give each other a little bit of extra space. Tell your family that you love them. And when next we meet, Halloween will be over. So unfortunately, Halloween is my favorite holiday. So yeah, enjoy your Halloween, everyone, I guess is what I'm saying. But if you are going out, be safe, wear a mask. Halloween's a perfect time for that anyway. So yeah. I got nothing else. John, say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people.
Bye, people. Until next time, everyone, peace and be excellent to each other.